My family and I are probably the biggest skeptics in the world, which is why I can't explain what happened that day. I went downstairs and my brother was in the kitchen. I grabbed a water and asked him if he believed in ghosts. He shook his head, but told me a story about something that he thinks may seem paranormal. Then I looked at him and asked, "Did you ever try to scare me when I came home from school?" I planned on asking that question to follow with my story. "Once," he said. Somehow that calmed me down, and I wasn't going to bring anything else up because I thought it was some kind of closure. He continued by saying, "But all I did was shoot a Nerf gun bullet at you while you were on the computer." I wish he didn't say that. That wasn't what happened to me in the 7th grade. I do remember him shooting a Nerf gun at me, but it felt inferior to what I was about to tell him. I continued to speak with him about the story that follows. It happened in middle school when I was in 7th grade and recently started off the new year. I came home that day and went to my bedroom where I sat in my bed and put in earbuds to watch YouTube videos. My mom had called me to tell me that my brother would be gone or would be leaving soon to go to a friend's house. My parents also worked late, which means I would be home alone. I was a very quiet kid when no one was around because I always had this fear that there could be someone in the house with me. If I didn't make much noise, then they couldn't find me, right? Who knew that suspicion could have possibly been true? I paused my YouTube video and headed to the bathroom. My house has a very weird layout. I'll try to explain what the important parts of the story looked like. If you were in my bathroom facing the door, you could step out and take a left, and my brother's room would be to your right at the end of the hallway, which is a short hallway. If you went right, you would reach the stairway that went down and stopped because there was a platform in the middle, and then you would walk in the same direction you came to get lower. The stairway leads to our main entrance of the house. We also have an alarm activated. If any doors or windows are opened, a box will immediately say which door has been used. I was in the bathroom and right about to flush the toilet when I heard a loud thud come from my brother's room. I assumed that he must be about to leave for his friend's house, so I flushed the toilet and got up to wash my hands. But there were no more noises. The house felt still, but I felt like I was being listened to. I turned off the sink and walked over to the bathroom door to lock it. Something felt wrong. My stomach started to ache from fear. I felt like I was just being paranoid, but I also couldn't shake that weird feeling in my gut. So I waited for another noise. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't text my brother. We had a house phone in there, but it made loud noises when you dialed, so I didn't want to risk it. Then I heard talking, which was definitely coming from my brother's room, but that was not my brother talking, and it couldn't have been my dad. The muttering was deep and low. It sent shivers down my spine. I could tell it was a voice because of the distinction of an S or a T, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. Then there was a slow pounding noise that started getting closer to me. It came out of my brother's room and nailed its way towards the bathroom door. It stopped dead in its tracks right at the door. I threw myself away from the door near the window, hoping that if it busted in, I could get away to leave. I couldn't fight whoever it was since I was a weak 7th grader, so that was out of the question. I covered my mouth to keep from breathing loudly in case they didn't know I was in the bathroom. Then they continued to walk. I could hear them making their way to the stairway, and then it stopped. I heard a loud crashing noise from what I thought was the middle platform of the stairs, and then again at the bottom. Then the muttering stopped, and the loud pounding made its way to the door. I heard the door open and close, and I heard the alarm go off for the door as well. I didn't know if it was safe or not, so I made my way to the door and rested my hand on the doorknob, still covering my mouth. To the left of me towards the ground is a laundry chute that led to our laundry room. If someone were to get from the main floor to the laundry room, it would definitely take over 30 seconds. But about 10 seconds after the door opened and closed, a vicious, jabbing noise pounded at the small laundry chute door. I stood there in awe, not sure what to do. It sounded like someone took the end of a broom and reached up there to stab at the door. I watched as the pounding of the door vibrated the small laundry chute door, hoping that it wouldn't bust open. Then it ended. I waited in the bathroom for what seemed like an eternity, and then quietly crept to my room to call my parents. No one picked up, so I waited for them to get home and held my door handle to make sure no one could get in, since I didn't have a lock on it. When my parents got home, they didn't believe me. Soon after, my brother arrived, and he doubted me as well. Telling this again to my brother made his mouth drop. He continued to tell me that he used to hear things come from the attic that used to open up in his bedroom. I will honestly never forget that day. Me and my brother can't figure out who or what that was, and I try not to think too hard about it either. I still don't quite know what happened, and I may never know, but I want to. My name's Alyssa. I was 16 years old at the time, living with my mom in a crappy Bronx, New York apartment. Living in the Bronx was definitely an experience, not a good one. Always sketchy characters around, usually scary to walk alone at night, small apartment, and creepy neighbors. I don't mean that as an understatement. Our apartment was the second to last one in a hall on the 7th floor, and our neighbor, the owner of the last apartment in the hall, seemed to always be sitting outside his door, sitting on the windowsill. He would always make a point of looking at me when I entered the apartment, even when I would be with my mom. My mom told me to stay away from that man. We never even knew his name. He was a black man in his 60s, very little hair left, but his remaining hair was gray. He always had the same emotionless expression on his face when he looked at me, and then one day, it started. Every time I would see him in the hall, he would say hi to me, but he'd call me by my name to make it even creepier. I wasn't exactly sure how he got my name, but I never asked. There was one night that my mom was working the night shift, so I'd be home alone all night. I came home at like 9 p.m., and the neighbor was as usual sitting on that windowsill as if he didn't have anything going on in his life. As I unlocked the door, this time instead of saying hi to me, he asked me if my mom was working tonight. Here's where I look back and cringe because of my own stupidity, because I foolishly nodded yes. He didn't say anything after that. He just slowly nodded his head. I didn't say anything else either. I simply walked inside and shut the door. I had enough of his creepy ass for one night. Basically, after getting home, I just washed up a little bit. I had a snack, did laundry, and took a shower. As I was in the shower, I heard a weird rumbling noise. It was a pretty concerning noise, but I couldn't even begin to try and pin out what it could have been. I got out of the shower after hearing it because I was concerned someone might have been in the apartment. I heard a similar noise outside of the bathroom. It seemed to come from my bedroom. I threw on the clothes I had in the bathroom and searched my entire room. I couldn't find a person, but while searching my room, I saw an ever so tiny hole in the wall. I got closer to feel it and look at it. Then I got down on my knees to look through it, and when I saw what was on the other side, I fell backwards because of how scared I was of what I saw. It was someone's eye. Someone was actually looking through that hole from the other side. Then I realized this wall separated our apartment from the creepy neighbor's apartment. Then I had a sudden realization of what that sound I heard in the bathroom must have been. I ran back to the shower and felt all around the wall until I found another hole, identical in size from the one in my room. The neighbor drilled these two holes, maybe even more, to spy on me. I called my mom and told her, and as I was on the phone with her, there were knocks on the apartment door. It was the neighbor, and he kept yelling, "Open the door right now, I didn't drill those holes." My mom freaked out and told me to call the cops, and she tried to get home ASAP. One good thing about the Bronx, police response time is fast, and there were cops at my apartment door in under 5 minutes. My mom was home half an hour later. My mom pressed charges for stalking, invasion of privacy, and criminal mischief. The apartment building also evicted the man and patched up the holes at the man's expense. I'll never forget the time my friend Hal and I went camping. Hal is an Eagle Scout and nature lover, so he's always going out on these camping trips. One time I decided to come along and see what it was about. He went with his at-the-time girlfriend Maya. I received a last-minute invitation. We carpooled together and arrived to the destination 3 hours later. Hal doesn't believe in going to campsites because it doesn't give the real camping experience when you're surrounded by other people, so he took us to some random dirt trail off some dead road that he seemed to know about. He drove down this dirt road in the woods for a couple minutes until he seemed to be content with where we were. Then he put the car in park. It was such an inconspicuous place to stop that I wasn't even aware at first that we were getting out there. Hal unloaded the trunk. Most of the stuff we brought consisted of tents, sleeping bags, food, toilet paper, and first aid equipment. Hal said he usually packed a lot lighter, but was making this an easy trip for Maya and I, whatever that meant. Once we found a good place to set up camp, Hal basically assigned us tasks. Setting up a tent was one thing I knew how to do, so Hal told me to set up the 2 tents. Maya stayed behind with me and kind of helped with the tents, while also unpacking some of the supplies. Hal went off to find dry firewood. He would come back every so often with a couple pieces of wood. Nightfall came quicker than expected. Thankfully, Hal had collected enough wood by then to start a nice fire, and the tents were pitched. We sat by the fire, drinking and reminiscing about old memories, most of which Maya was not in the picture for. I imagine she got tired of hearing our drunken nonsensical stories because she went to her tent before Hal and I. So Hal and I stayed up for a little while longer, now being a bit quieter and keeping the laughter to a minimum as a courtesy to Maya. I finished my last beer, and I was definitely feeling it by then. We chatted for a bit more, until Hal told me to shh and listened. I heard it too. There was walking out in the distance. beyond the area at which the fire lit up. Hal assured me it was likely a deer. When I naively asked what if it's a bear, he reassured me that a bear would not come this close to a campfire or the sound of people. I asked him if he was sure about that. He didn't answer though. The footsteps seemed to be going in circles, getting ever so slightly louder with each passing minute. When the footsteps got close enough, we started to hear a disturbing noise. It was like a clicking, growling type of noise. "Is that a wolf?" I whispered. Hal didn't answer. He just motioned for me to get into the tent. I did what he said. I got into the tent that I pitched for myself, and I believe Hal got into the tent that I pitched for he and Maya. The clicking noise outside was getting more and more clear, and it increasingly became obvious it was not the sound of a wolf, or a bear, or any kind of animal I could imagine. It didn't even sound like something of this planet. The light from the fire outside cast an eerie glow onto the walls of the tent, and I had to cover my mouth so that I wouldn't scream when I saw the shadow on the tent walls of some horrific, huge, bipedal thing walking past my tent. The footsteps were so slow, but so heavy. It moved away from my tent towards the direction of Hal and Maya's tent. The next thing I remember, besides waiting in absolute horror, was Maya's scream. She screamed as if something were about to kill her. I didn't know what was happening, but I heard Hal screaming outside, "Run," over and over. I heard the two of them hurrying away outside, so I rushed outside and followed. We ran in the pitch black, no flashlights, nothing, and yet we still knew we were being chased by something. Footsteps followed close behind me since I was in the back. By some miracle, Hal managed to lead us right to the car, and without looking back, we all got into our respective seats, and Hal floored it down the trail. Hal drove down the dirt trail for about half a minute before we came to a dead end. He had to somehow turn this pickup truck around now, in this dark forest, not too far from where we were being chased. I urged him to turn off the lights so that whatever was chasing us wouldn't see us. He insisted he needed the lights on though so that he wouldn't hit any trees trying to turn the truck around. He shifted from drive to reverse, over and over. Meanwhile, I sat in the backseat biting my nails and clenching my teeth, looking around the woods outside, terrified that I might see that thing from our campsite. At long last, Hal got the truck completely turned around, and he once again stepped on it to get us out of that forest. We left everything at that campsite, at least $100 worth of equipment, but there was zero chance of us ever going back there. What caused Maya to scream was heavy breathing and something pushing into their tent, trying to rip it open. Hal still says he's never heard or seen anything like that in his life. He still has no idea what it could have been, but it definitely walked on two legs. How do we know it wasn't a person, you might ask? Simply because of its size and the noises it made. I think everyone has one truly horrific, unexplainable experience in their lives, and this was ours.